So, continuing on with our analysis of the Age of Faerie in Eurasia, the next facet usually gets me into trouble, so we'll talk about it in passing, but it is an important aspect of analyzing this history. So, marriage practices of the Ubaid, the original Elven-Ffayrie. Today, the Elven-Ffayrie carry a genetic memory, and the preservation of genetics was what this whole marriage practice thing was aimed at. Now, this genetic memory hints at sexual marriage unions considered taboo in most contemporary society, and many of which considered, I suppose, incestual. But these were the same licenses used by the ancient Phoenicians, the Pharaonic dynasties, which included in the Phoenician case sometimes unions between parent and child, but it was most common between siblings, such as in the Pharaonic and the other dynasties that became evident when preserving the bloodline of a royal family. There's definitely more than one nuclear family involved in the lineage, but this impression that such is impossible, that such only creates genetic problems and whatnot, analyzing some research from like Cambridge University and some other stuff, we find, in truth, your moral beliefs and all that crap aside, in truth, biologically, we find that sibling unions, having different mothers, but the same father, is not, it does not promote this, what most people would consider like deformities and things like that. So that is a truth that we've discovered, and such explains that why and how that could have been possible in the past. That idea runs rampant again in Egyptian pharaohs, and even when we talk about Abraham and Sarah in the Bible, Sarah is introduced as Abraham's wife's sister. Says that she is both my wife and my sister, but he clarifies, saying specifically that she is the daughter of my father, but not my mother. So, just food for thought there. Moving along, the Ubaid and the Sumerians developed a culture rich in traditions and education, art, agricultural achievement. A deeply spiritual and magical tradition was ignited as a means to preserve these secrets of the ages, particularly since the Ubaid were at the time one of the more oldest strains, going back to the source of that region. So they didn't want themselves to be allowed to be subdued by the sons of man, or they would have been no more. So their contribution is important because historians often start human civilization with ancient Sumeria, but we don't really know where this all comes from and emerges from. And they seem to have been this earlier like priest-king class that were like intermediaries with the Anunnaki directly. As these people were able to expand their civilization and their knowledge of their existence and that around them, they became known as the Scythian Dravidian folk that actually spread to the Turkey region, established ancient Druidry there, and that later became the Druidnemicon, the place of meeting where even the Druids all the way out in Ireland and Britain would annually actually travel all the way back to Turkey. And this is something that's kind of overlooked when people analyze the history of Celtic people and the Druids and whatnot. The region is referred to in lore sometimes as the Gangetic. The Aryans and Dravidians discovered one another, and they kind of blended to form the Latin Tuatha, Dannan, Dianu, or Anu. A race still considered the Andites, the children of Andan, which moved their priesthood all along the Danube and Rhine rivers, bringing their culture from the Mesopotamian Mediterranean across mainland Europe to the British Isles. And along their travels, they met the Blue Folk, which had continued to develop separately from the Eden project after that whole thing collapsed. And these folk developed also into the forefront of the Latin culture that we now call Celtic. And it should be understood, this culture was not restricted to the Isles, to just the western area. These folk dominated Europe until the persecution by the Milesians and Romans and whatnot. The Danubian race inhabited Western Europe during the Stone Age and continued the tradition of the Old Ones in the erection of large stone monuments, and and archaeologists have really had little to study concerning the Ubaid period that extends from prehistory until the coming of the Uruk Sumerians circa 3500 BC. The Ubaid culture is mainly indicated or classified as such based on the excavated greenish pottery that's found in Mesopotamia. And what's interesting is it bears a very distinctive artistic style that we would later find among the Latin Celtic culture. Their race was also responsible for the religion in Mesopotamia and the construction of the first ziggurats, sacred places or structures of a pyramidal nature. This construction was taking place simultaneously with Egyptian pyramids and not long before the first stages of Stonehenge.